Do you need an agronomist for your farming operation? How should you go about getting that agronomist? Should you hire a person on staff? Should you use a consulting agronomist? What is the best option for you to go about hiring an agronomist? You need one. We're going to answer the question of how you go about securing one in this episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
It's XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast, cutting your learning curve and improving your farming operation every week. This episode of the Cutting the Curve podcast is powered by Nachurs Bio-K technology, delivering enhanced nutrient cycling, greater plant health, and elevated stress mitigation, leading to increased crop yields. Visit nachurs.com. And now, let's get ready to learn with your host, Damian Mason.
Hey there, another fantastic episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve. Our producer, Will, has been chomping at the bit to get this topic recorded because, we're heading into spring here, and maybe, depending on where you are geographically, you're already in the fields. Good for you. Here's the thing. Where are you getting your agronomic input, your advice, the technical expertise that you need to make good decisions in your farming operation? Some of our guys are larger scale farms. They have agronomic consultants on staff. And then there are agronomic consultants that are just truly on a consultancy basis that work for hire, charged by the hour, charged by the acre. Then there are the companies that send out their sales agronomists. And our friend Brian Adams has a lot of opinions about that. Brian's joined by Johnny Verell. Brian Adams is in business with Johnny Verell with Volunteer Ag Services in Jackson, Tennessee. John Verell, one of our XtremeAg guys, Western Tennessee farmer, and also, I think, the only XtremeAg guy with an actual degree in agronomy. So tell us how things work around Verell Farms, and then there's so many different options on how you go about getting agronomic expertise, which you obviously need. So I think the first question I says, do you need an agronomist? There's no question. Both of you guys say yes.
Yeah, I think we would both agree, all of us would agree that you need an agronomist. And, for our farming operation, we're always looking at ways to do things different, think outside the box. And that's where working with multiple agronomists kind of bring ideas in, sit around the table, get a plan in place. And so, I've got an agronomist, Brewer Blessed, that works one-on-one with the farm. I get to work with Brian Adams one-on-one with the farm too. Of course, he works in the sales side of the business that we have too. So kind of work all together there and kind of start off with a plan, what products we're going to use, the timing that they're going to go out, get a budget put in place, and make sure we stay in that budget, because we'll all sit in there around that table and kind of come up where we think we can spend for the year, what products are the best fit, and go from there. And that's kind of how we started doing it the last few years at our farming operation, is to kind of get somebody to come in from outside the farm that doesn't stay here on a daily basis, that works all over the country, kind of sees different operation, what works, what doesn't work on certain operations across the country, and then bring it in here so we can sit here and figure out what's going to be the best plan for us this coming year.
Okay, so you don't have, and you farm a fair amount of acres. You could have someone just on staff that says, I'm the person that does all cropping advisory, all inputs, all fertility, and then even you could hire that. You could have that as a full-time job at your farming operation, couldn't you?
And that's kind of what I went to school for. I started off, I got an associate's degree in precision ag, so I understood, soil sampling, grid sampling, writing recs, all that type thing. Ended up with a agronomy degree. And, kind of did all that stuff myself for almost, 15, 16 years, and then decided to bring somebody else in because I was doing it the way I was taught in college. It really hadn't changed. Mm-hmm. And in farming, we got to constantly evolve, constantly go to the next level. And that's why I wanted to bring somebody in to really help me break down my scripts, help me break down my cost per acre, and actually what products are going to be the best fit, because the products that I was using was the same products my granddad was using in the 60s is what we're still using from a fertility standpoint. Did that really work, or was there something better? And that's where thinking outside the box. The funniest thing is that's how me and Brian kind of met. He was an agronomist with Pioneer at the time. He got put as the local agronomist for me, and we started talking about how we wanted to think outside the box on some corn one year, or what we could do to push the levels of the yield. And so he came in, and we started doing all kinds of different tissue sampling, some predictive stuff that he had access to. Yeah. And, he had some concepts that we wanted to try, and that was probably that was the best yield we've had on our farm to date, really. And it's mainly because we thought outside the box and kind of changed things on the fly that year. So, I just, when you ask, how come you don't have somebody full-time on your farm? I think that's a great thing. Some farmers do it and it works. I'm going to say for me, I like people that work at different parts of the country with different farmers so that I don't get in the same rut every year and kind of see what's going on across everywhere. Not that your agronomist is going to tell everything you do on your farm, but a lot of the stuff they will network, and other farmers will reach out to you and say, hey, what are you going to do this year on this? And you can kind of work together.
Extremely valid point about the, you are collegiately trained at Murray State to be an agronomist. But the thing is, after 15 years, you get to where you're kind of siloed. You knew what you'd been doing, but you didn't have the infusion of outside thoughts or experiences. So, Mr. Brian, that's kind of a neat thing right there. I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. You got Brewer Blessed as a hired consultant. You've got a crop consultant, a field consulting, if you will, scouting that happens right there. You've got Johnny, who you're in business with, who also owns the farm. And then you've got you. I think there's too many cooks in the kitchen. I think that it looks like, well, it sounds like it could be collaboration, could also be conflict. Well, I think we should do this. I think we should do that. Are there too many cooks in the kitchen there at Verell Farms and Volunteer Ag Services?
I can see where somebody would certainly believe that, Damian. And a lot of times, if it's not the right group, I would say that could be true. In Johnny's case, no. The guy he uses for the everyday insect, weeds, diseases, that sort of thing, that guy kind of sticks to that. That's his area of expertise. That's kind of where he sticks to. Brewer and what he's doing from a financial and crop planning standpoint. And then, of course, Brewer and I have been really tight for 10 plus years now. He and I are generally in agreement. A lot of times ideas are bounced back and forth between he and I. He and I are very rarely in disagreement. A lot of times we'll challenge one another, and I think that's, consequentially a good thing. Probably keeps us all sharper, keeps us all on our toes. And then my kind of role fits in as the everyday advice, in-season management, things like that to help fill that gap. So, no, technically I'm not a paid consultant for Verell Farms. Johnny is the owner of multiple businesses, Volunteer Ag certainly being one of them. Rightly or wrongly, I am and I am not a paid consultant all at the same time. As far as his farm side of things goes, it looks really good on his bottom line every year for what he pays me. So, yeah. But I get that elsewhere, right? And that's the nature of friendship and things like that. So, no, in this particular case, there's not too many cooks in the kitchen. But we as agronomists sometimes can have egos. We're not immune to that. But the group we have that Johnny has on staff, I think, work very well together.
So I sent you an outline of questions that if I was a farmer or listening to this, because I was trying to think of if I'm a farmer that's dialing in, and we meet them all the time at all the field days and whatnot. We meet these people that keep up with our stuff. How do I know if or when I need an agronomist? Say I'm a smaller acreage farmer, I can get all kinds. The co-op, the ag retailer, they'll send somebody out. And I think there's kind of this idea, hey, you only farm 800 acres. You can't afford like having somebody on staff. Yeah, we got somebody right here. No insult, no insult to the retailers that have that person. But I've always thought that's kind of like taking, financial advice from the person that's selling you financial products or something like that. I think there's a little bit of a case to be made. So, Johnny, how did you look at this whole thing? Did it ever occur to you that maybe you don't need to be spending money on this?
Yeah, it does. But then when things, the last few years, fertility costs, stuff like that goes up. I was sitting in there one day, I think Brian and Brewer in the conference room with me, we were going over some stuff, and I said, Brewer, I've been writing these scripts this way. And he kind of looked up and he's like, how long have you been using these same fertility scripts? And I was like, well, these are the ones I learned how to use in college. So, going on 20 years, I've been using the same ones. And he's like, well, a lot of things have changed since then. He said, let me play with some of the data and see what it comes up with. And, not saying I cut all the fertilizer or put more out, but just having another set of eyes. And, that's how it works with Brewer. He's just a paid consultant on a per acre basis. If I let him consult on the whole farm, he's paid on the whole farm. If not, what I do like, though, we're sitting in there kind of brainstorming, trying to figure out what to use. You bring in Brian in the room there, he might know of, say, 3 different potassium acetates that we can use, or 4 different phosphorus products that we can use, what the cost is. Brewer might not know the cost. He might not know every company that sells them, so to say, whereas Brian comes in and he does. And then Brian alluded to the crop consultant that I'm using that actually scouts my crops. Jason Hamlin, he goes out there and he tells us what he's seeing, and then we make a plan. He makes a recommendation, and we make a plan of what products are the best to go out then. And we kind of do that together. I'll call Brian, or I'll usually send Brian the rec that he sent saying, hey, what products would you recommend here? It could be from an insecticide standpoint. Brian's got more knowledge of that. He's got more data on that himself than anybody else I deal with. So he always falls into play there, especially in late season insecticide applications on soybeans, wheat, different things like that. So I guess where I'm going with that is I don't want to get narrow-minded. I really don't want to rely on one person. I want to rely on the team.
Yeah. So the team that works for you is there's a person that is out in the fields as a scout. And so that person certainly has agronomic knowledge, but doesn't make scripts. Brewer, hired consultant on a per acre basis. You see him several times a year, I assume, and then also there's communication on the phone. And then he's doing agronomic true consulting. He looks at numbers and says, here's what we should be doing. And to the point you're making there is, Brian knows how to get the products, but also you like the idea that somebody like Brewer is working in a pretty big region. So he's bringing you experiences and trial results, et cetera, from a pretty broad area versus just the next township over.
Yeah, and I think that's what college taught me more than anything is how to network, because we'll be sitting in there and Brian's like, hey, I can reach out to this guy over in Arkansas, and he's done this project here. Or if nobody that we can find has, that's where me and Brian go out there and we'll do some test strips on my farm to see if it works or if it doesn't. We're not quite to the extent that Chad is, where Chad goes out and actually tries to kill the crop. But we'll go out there and push the limits and see if that's going to work. And that way, when Brian's talking to other customers or people that he runs into, we kind of know what's going to work or what did or did not work on my farming operation. That's kind of like the guinea pig, so to say. That's the biggest thing is I think farmers get so tunnel vision sometimes, and I was that way for a long time, and I'm still that way on some things. I mean, I remember one time, Brian kind of told me, he said, you don't need to look at it that way. You need to look at it this way, because you'll get so focused on either trying to save money or trying to do this, and it actually hurts you. You got to be careful, and that's where you need that team around you to keep you in check.
Yeah, that's a neat thing right there. So your role in the team, Brian, I want to hear about it. Before I do, I want to talk about Superior Grain. If you go to Verell Farms Field Day, which is August 7th, am I right about that? I'm looking at my calendar. August 5th, Tuesday, August 5th. I think you should go to it. It's one of the 7 XtremeAg field days that we're going to have. You can walk around the farm and see a whole bunch of really good grain equipment that is there, and a bunch of it is from Superior Grain. So one of the videos I shot was climbing up on the grain dryer, in fact, there. So Superior Grain is a business partner here of XtremeAg, and they are sponsoring this episode of Cutting the Curve. As your farm operation grows, so do the challenges. Superior Grain Equipment's grain storage systems are built to make your job easier and help your grain reach its full potential. Talking about grain handling, we're talking about quality, we're talking about a lot of things that you can help yourself by maybe upgrading your grain handling system. From gentle mixed flow dryers to durable storage, get the flexibility to market your grain on your time. Visit with the experts from Superior Grain Equipment at this year's Farm Progress Show in August in Decatur, Illinois, or visit them online anytime at superiorbenz.com. superiorbenz.com. What's your role in this, Brian? Your role is the one that probably, I bet you antagonize Brewer, and you probably question the scouting guy, and then you probably actually buckle down and go out and say, here's how we're going to make this all work from the dollars and cents. That's my guess.
It's actually fairly accurate for the most part. I antagonize Brewer. I try to keep him young. But all jokes aside, a lot of what I'll do is, take a late season insecticide application for any particular pest. For us, it's maybe loopers or stink bugs or something like that. My role, my background, master's and PhD in entomology, a lot of times I look at Johnny and I look at the crop and I'll say, look, it's what you're going to protect is not worth the cost of the application. Let's kill it and let it ride. I guess I'm the head of DOF, the Department of Farming Efficiency, for the group. So I don't have the cool South African accent that Elon has, but or the money, because I'm hanging out with you guys, obviously. But I really feel about any gap that's needed as far as day-to-day recommendations, plugging in information. Brewer is paid consultant. Brewer has a lot going on. He's all around the country. And as Johnny mentioned, that brings a very unique perspective. A lot of times I'll go out, I'll see what I'm seeing. I'll tell Johnny, we'll call Brewer, we'll powwow, we'll make decisions, we'll go from there. My day-to-day paid role, Damian, is basically to run the retail business, which is Ball Ag for Johnny. And so at the end of the day, I run a business that is retail, therefore sales have to happen. That I'm involved in every day. I have a list of customers, far and wide beyond just Johnny. He's kind of an easier sell. I probably neglect him from that standpoint of taking care of him like I do some of the other guys, but he's got his own unique ways of getting that back out of me. But that's really sort of where I fit. Johnny, I mean, feel free to add, but a lot of the day-to-day recommendations, the understanding of the products, why any given product might be superior to another at any given time for any specific application.
Well, I'm gonna go to the first question. We know your role because you're in a different kind of thing that you own your own retail. Verell Farms also owns their own retail, and you're part of that. For the farmer that says, "All right, I got it," Kelly has Mike Evans on staff. I'm not big enough to have an agronomist on staff, but I'll do the Verell model here, and I'll hire different people that can cover acres for me. The person that can be the scout, the person that goes out and scouts your fields is not an employee, right? It's a contractual arrangement.
Yeah, that's how it is for me. And
that's how it is for most, right?
Yeah, and the guy that scouts for me, he might scout 30,000 acres, which is what I want. I really don't want somebody that's just scouting my ground. Yeah, I want somebody scouting a big area, and that way, if there's a insect coming in, he might can see it coming before it gets to me.
Right. So all of a sudden he's four counties away. He says, "Holy crap, we didn't think we were going to see this, but now we're seeing whatever rust, spot, tar, this, whatever." You just pay them by the acre, and then you got Brewer that is more long range. That's a season long thing. So the person listening to this says, "Okay, the scout gets paid per acre. Is that for the season, or is it every time they cover the acre?"
It's a certain charge per acre to cover the wheat crop costs me so much money, the bean crop costs me so much money
for the season.
And it's the same way with Brewer. It's a per acre charge with Brewer, but Brewer consults on me, but he also consults on some of Brian's customers too.
Yeah, and that's, again, for per acre for the season.
That's right. And I like that though, because I mean, it goes back to if we'll pick on Brewer while we're talking about it. If he just consulted on me, how big is his box?
Yeah, right.
And I'm telling you, that's so important in today's times. And a lot of times you deal with somebody that might be at a certain retail location. He's only seeing customers in a certain county. He's not seeing the whole picture of what's working everywhere. And the beautiful thing about working with somebody like Brewer, and Brian, I tell you this, Brewer's got customers in Texas that already got corn knee high.
Yeah.
So if they're using products down there and it's working, getting responses, it gives us a heads up too. And so I'm saying, thinking outside the box, getting outside your area is always big.
Incidentally, we're recording this on April 7th. If you're saying, well, whenever this gets released. So the point is, and you've got corn that's not even been planted.
Yeah. We got corn that's planted that we're going to have to replant because we just got 14 inches of rain.
Right. So and the person that says, well, I don't know, man, I put that money out there, this crop scout or this consultant, I give them so much money per acre for the season, and then they walk and I never see them again. Is it spread out? Do you pay them in installments?
Yeah, I pay in installments. I pay quarterly. The guy that scouts my wheat, I pay him a little bit different too. But at the end of the day, he starts out with the planting, setting the planters, making sure the crop gets established good, doing stand counts, to herbicide shots in the fall, to here we are in the spring. It's a 7-8 step process in our wheat. Our wheat's kind of like a high management crop now. Yeah. And you just need somebody. I need somebody directing me what products and timing. And I will tell you this: if a farmer, we don't have time to scout like they do, right? You can say you do, and some farmers can. I do not have the time to do it. So I need somebody that's going around looking, and he doesn't turn in one recommendation that's the same for, say, 2,000 acres a wheat or 1,000 acres a wheat. It might be 4 recommendations broke out over 2,000 acres a wheat. Whereas if I was scouting, I'm going to do the easy button, and I'm going to use a $15 product on every acre, where some of his products might be $4.
Yeah.
So he pays. A good consultant always pays for theirself one way or the other.
Yeah. So your point is, you've got a trucking business to run. You've got your grain facility. You've got the retail business. You've got all your acres. You got various other things. If you pulled in and looked at one of your soybean or wheat fields, you'd say, okay, crap, looks like we got this problem. And then you'd go ahead and get the guys lined up and then load the sprayer. Your scouting, crop scout, I guess is what it is covering your 2,000 acres of wheat by at minimum probably looks at 20 different times and 100 acres each or whatever. So they're giving a lot more thorough analysis.
Yeah, and you got a baseline, because if they find issues with weeds, they go back and track. If we didn't kill them, we need to change up something to try again. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of times a farmer will put out a spray and walk away, and it's usually a more expensive spray because they don't want to go back.
Yep.
This lets you do things a certain way.
Brian, how do you measure this? I know you're kind of the nut cutting type, so you're not going to let somebody get away with doing a bad job. What's the measuring?
Yeah, so I've been chewing on this question since you sent me the agenda. It's not as easy as having a side-by-side out in the field to understand maybe what a consultant is doing for you, but I think you need to have some sort of set in place. To me, an agronomist, if he's going to be either on a hired consultant basis or on a staff basis, he's got to carry his load. And I still don't know that I know the best way to answer that, but like what Brewer is doing, we picked on Brewer this whole time, but Brewer is a little more tangible, easier to measure, especially on the budget side of things. So my challenge to anybody going down that road would be make your own budget, come up with it, wait on it, hire this guy that's going to do this same thing, let him roll this budget out, explain to you where he's going to help pay for himself, justify his means for being there. That might be in cuts, that might be in swaps, that might be a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, you've got to carry your own weight. Much like Johnny said, I know some guys that are on, more of a scout type business of consulting. For me, if a guy comes back with a blanket 4,000 acre recommendation, he didn't look at all those acres. You'll never convince me he did. And look, maybe he did, right?
Yeah,
in other cases where that could happen, is that going to happen every time? Almost never, right? I mean, it's so dynamic across the areas you farm, neighboring crops, pest insects, weed pressure based on history of fields, previous tenant farmers on rented ground. Nothing's ever going to be the same. I would be leery of somebody that came back with that same recommendation every time. But finding out these guys that are truly helping with data analytics, at the end of the year, drilling down, hey, this is what made us money, this is what didn't. This is how we're going to adjust for next year. As long as that guy's got a plan, we keep moving going forward, and you can see some sort of tangible progress. I really think that's about how you go about it, Damian. I wish I had a better, more clear-cut, black and white type answer, but it's a pretty black and white question that I think has a pretty great answer.
Well, Johnny, you're the one that writes the check. Obviously, you've got the business, your bottom line, et cetera. Is it measured by just yield? I don't think so. Is it measured by, I'm guessing you probably are smart in that you look back at year over year over year on maybe inputs. Of course, that also, you can't blame good advice or bad advice. The season changed. Sometimes you're spending more in inputs because you have more problems. I mean, how the hell do you measure this?
Man, I think you just set a benchmark and you go from there and see what happens, because we can have the best plan in place and it turn off hot and dry in July and not rain for 60 days, and we lost everything we worked for.
Yep.
Just like 10 days ago, I guess we started planting, 2 weeks ago this Wednesday, we started planting. I talked to Brian, I talked to Brewer, I talked to all these different people, and they're like, yeah, let's just plant 2 days and you stop. So we planted Wednesday, Thursday. It didn't even rain until the following Wednesday, but it's rained from that Wednesday until yesterday, which was Sunday, about 14 inches. So no matter everything we did, that was perfect. We had the planter set. They were planting the best they ever had. Brian came out, looked at some things. Our infer program was perfect. The corn's coming up. Then you have a disaster like that, and you can't overcome that, right? But that's where you need somebody like Brian to step in and say, hey, that crop either probably going to have to be replanted or you're not going to need to push it because it's never going to have that top end yield, especially when we got roots exposed in places. We got all kinds of things going on out there. You know, the only other thing I would throw in there, Damian, with what Brian was saying, I would say you always want a consultant that wants to learn with you. You want somebody that wants to do trials on your farm, that wants you to learn, wants you to feel, touch it, see it. And you want your consultant doing the same thing. A consultant that reads something in the book and never goes and sees it at a field day or goes to any type of program like that is somebody I'd be kind of leery of, because if they haven't seen what it really looks like, I wouldn't be advising that. I like it when Brian and Brewer come up with ideas, and that's how our field day's been based for what, Brian, almost 8 years now? We've had a field day, 9 years.
Yeah.
Our field day has been based off of agronomic stuff that we've kind of brainstormed about every year and try to keep it challenging.
Yeah, so I think that you just said, so if we ask the question, do you need an agronomist? We think the answer is yes. And then here's how to hire one, and what are you looking for, and all that. All right. I'm hearing that, first off, whoever you have better be curious. And also, like Evans, say with Kelly, you say, well, he's on staff. Well, he's only seeing what happens at Garrett Land and Cattle. Well, that's not true, because they also have another business where he has customers in other places independently. So I think that's that thing that's what you said. If I was big enough to have somebody on staff, I would make sure as hell that they were keeping up with what's going on in another state and another part of the country.
That's right.
What about the measuring? God, that's just got to be a tough one, because you're measuring this year 14 inches of rain the end of March, beginning of April. It changes the entire.
It could be the best corn I have or the worst, depending on what the summer turns out, because the other corn is going to be 3-4 weeks behind it. So you just don't know. I mean, I would think measuring, as long as they do their job, like let's say they scout the crops, as long as they're turning in the reports, I really feel like they're walking the fields, because, you know, a lot of times it's hard to scout a field, right? You got tree lines, you got ditches. We got all kinds of stuff here in West Tennessee. When we get on the sprayers and we start spraying, sometimes we question, well, did they do this? Did they not? You go back and look at the notes. Yeah, they saw it. They put it in the notes, you know. So, I mean, to get a good benchmark, I don't know. You know, you want somebody that walks your fields and you trust they do. If they don't have walking shoes on, they might not be the best crop consultant for you. Maybe that's the best way to say that.
So
I once heard our friend Brewer say, "Never trust a pale agronomist."
Because they're not in the sun. Yeah, so that's the thing. It's boots on the ground. And so when you talk about measuring, I think the big one, because if I'm listening to this show and I say, okay, how do I go about hiring? What do I look for? First off, you want lots of breadth. You want them to be going to field days. You want them to have buddies in Nebraska or Virginia. That way they can hear what's happening in other parts of the world. That's why I want to be active. I want boots on the ground. I want them to be curious and go to different stuff. I want them to be connected, right? That they've got other agronomic pals in other parts of the country that are telling them about what they're seeing. I think from the business standpoint, I'm probably thinking I want to make sure they understand that there's a bottom line to this, because I don't mind paying you, but also that means that I'm investing in you for the expertise, but we can't just be blowing money nilly, out here because things are a little tight. I'm guessing that's probably a pretty big concern.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and another thing that we do with my consultant actually scouts the fields. He's paid a bonus on wheat if you go over a certain yield. So that also keeps some things in check. If you have a act of God or weather event come in that you can't control, you know, he's not going to get a bonus like a late season freeze. A lot of times that's what we run into this time of year. Our wheat's getting ready to head out. Mm-hmm. Easter weekend's always the hard weekend for us to make it through that.
Hey, wait, you know what our friend Kevin calls that?
What's that?
Easter freeze. He gets giddy and jumps around about Easter freezing.
Well, it's funny because it doesn't matter if it's the 1st of April or the 19th of April. There always seems to be a freeze on that date.
That's what he says also. It gives him nightmares, actually.
But, I mean, that's one way it kind of helps work with your consultants to where they're always trying to make your wheat or your soybeans be the best they can if there is a premium for them at the end of the year, too. If you stay in budget and make a top-end yield, then here you go. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but you know, $1 here and there on the acres they scouted is a big deal for them. And
sure it is.
I think it's worth it.
Well, like you said, if they're covering 30,000, 50,000 acres and they can make a buck off of that, that's a $30,000, $50,000 bonus, which, you know, they're small independent business people themselves. So speaking of all that right there, I don't know who sets this up. The person that says, okay, I need to probably get a little more agronomic help. I like what Brian and John are telling me. Does the the consultant agronomist or consulting crop scout bring you their contract and say, here's how we work with other farms? And that way, because you've described, okay, it's paid per this, and it varies by crop, and then it's also, there's a bonus. Is that a standard kind of a contract?
Yeah, it is. And I would always ask on the front end how many visits a year you're going to do. If you're wanting somebody to visit every week, I'd be very clear. You know, if you want somebody walking your fields with you, I'd be very clear, because there's consultants out there that do that, and then there's consultants out there that are more come in 3 or 4 times a year and meet with you.
Yep.
They're a phone call away anytime you need them. And then, you know, that type of thing. Just like the guy scouts my wheat and soybeans, he scouts my soybeans once they come up every week. He scouts my wheat about every other week, every, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the growth stage. Because you got to remember, in the winter, it goes dormant, not a lot happening. I'm not expecting him to be walking out there on frozen ground and in the mud. But this time of year, when the flag leaf's coming out, the heads just start coming out, I want him looking for a disease, and he is. You know, he's probably worried to death right now how much wheat's underwater after what we just went through. But you want somebody, I'd have it in the contract on the front end, and that way there's never any complications at the end of the year.
I'm sure there's been somebody that's gotten stung no matter what, and there's going to be somebody that remember, there's a lot of people that are kind of negative and skeptic in this business. Have you noticed that, Brian?
Oh, absolutely.
And then they're going to say, I don't know, man. I think it's just a bunch of money that blows out the door. I don't need any of that. I know what I'm doing, but you run the risk then if you're doing the same thing that your dad did and your grandpa did.
Well, a good agronomist is going to understand that. If nothing else, he's going to understand products you need. Maybe it's, our part of the world, boron, for example, being such a leachable nutrient. To me, I've never been a big fan of spreading dry boron for a lot of reasons. It's easier to feed it in crop, right? I mean, a good agronomist is going to know that, for example, know when to do that, what recommendation to make. A good agronomist is going to save you money by making the right applications, right rates, right source, whatever. Not to go back to the 4 R's, but I guess to go back to the 4 R's. Getting that done timely, efficiently, maybe there is a better way, right? And that goes back to being outside a bigger box, networking with people and perspectives.
If you're not a big operator, you still can. I mean, I'm sure that our guys that you're talking about, they'll cover a 500-acre operation as long as it's probably it works into their plan, right?
I would certainly think so. I know if I were in that business, I would. And for some of those smaller guys, I think maybe, my opinion, it makes a lot more sense for them to have a paid consultant, not necessarily somebody on staff, but a contractual basis. Yep. That might fit the operation better. If you sit down and start looking at it and figure out, hey, if it's $5 an acre, $8 an acre, whatever it is, it's probably going to vary across the country. It's going to vary across what services they're providing. Just like Johnny said about field visits, have that talk up front, get and set clear expectations, and then nobody's disappointed that way. But hiring that guy, I think a lot of times is going to do you a world of good, especially if he's not selling any products, right? Like, I guess anybody in the world could be for sale, right, for the right price.
So now we're moving into it. He's been wanting to cover it for this entire. I'm going to push him into it. He wants to now give us your opinion on the sales agronomist. If their business card says sales agronomist, what do you think?
Ask me first what my business card says below my name. Yours says sales agronomist. Mine does say sales agronomist. That is a piss poor term if I've ever heard one. I struggle with it.
I think you should take it off your business card, by the way.
Johnny makes my business card. But I struggle with that term for a lot of reasons. Sometimes I feel that it's offensive to me. It's offensive to other people. Everything I do, I try to approach with integrity, right? I said earlier on this episode, I help run the day-to-day of a business that requires sales being made to keep us going. I also offer agronomic advice. I would say that makes me a prime candidate to be one that somebody would look at and say, well, can he truly be unbiased? While I would like to say most of the time, yeah. Does it ever slip up on me? Probably. I struggle with the term sales agronomist because it's used by so many companies to try to differentiate salespeople. But there's a lot of people, and I'm not even going to pick on an age group. I know them from near retirement with gray hair to fresh out of college. Just because somebody gives you a damn price list and a truck and a set of keys and a cell phone, that don't make you an agronomist, right? If you're not providing value, you're just a damn salesman. I don't care what anybody else says. I like to think that some of the success that I have had across my career has been because I provide more value than just the cheapest price, right? Because I don't care who you are, you're never going to be the cheapest every time, right? There's always somebody out there that's going to slip in and beat you on X or beat you on Y, but to provide value, and I think the way that I try to do this and say that I maintain integrity is when a grower comes to me with a problem, the first instinct is always to say, okay, can I help find a solution? Mm-hmm. A lot of the times I can. Sometimes I like to phone a friend, right, and go back to that perspective piece. But to genuinely offer a solution to any problem or a sound agronomic recommendation, I feel very confident that I can do that. When I do that, I try to be completely product agnostic, right? If my guys trust me and think I'm doing the right thing by them, and again, like I said, I love to think that I am all the time, and I really do strive to do that. If I'm doing my job by offering sound agronomic advice, guess what? Generally, the next or one of the next two questions they're going to ask me is, okay, how would you do it? Is there a product for that, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, my recommendations are outside of products, right? It's changing practices or whatever. Something that, that I necessarily can't monetize in my role, and that's fine too, right? That's part of building that integrity, building that trust, building that relationship. But 8.5 to 9 times out of 10, if I'm the guy that helps this, particular grower, whoever it is, they can see that tangible result saying, okay, I was going down the wrong road. Brian helped me fix that. I learned something from him. Okay, I'm going to buy, if there's a product that can be bought to solve said problem, I'm going to buy this product from Brian. I'm probably not even going to price him for it.
Yep.
What I like about that is when you do the right thing, those people keep coming back to you and keep coming back to you. And if you build a sales book, in my opinion, in that way, those are relationships I think that stand the test of time through a good economy or an economy more like today's. So I enjoy that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it behooves me to go out and sell to Johnny or any other customer of mine a bunch of crap they don't need, especially in a tight economy, right? Because if I run them out of business, I'm running my own book of business, right out the door. And that doesn't do any good for anybody. But man, I really struggle with that sales agronomy term because they almost need to be separate. It's okay just to be a salesman, right? Some of the most successful business people in the world started as salesmen. There's a bunch of guys that are really good agronomists that don't want anything to do with sales. I was one of those guys at one point, and then I realized I like the sales side of things better, Damian. But, for me, there are people that can wear the hat of both, and it's an okay term, but it's pretty piss poor, I think, from one direction or the other.
Johnny, by the way, he said before we hit record, he said, I probably got 15 minutes just on my opinions about the term sales agronomist. He wasn't lying. He was not lying.
You asked, though.
Told you where we were going. Look, I warned you. I did my part. That was my honest agronomic advice to you. You chose to go down the road.
I appreciate it. Speaking of whether it's a sales agronomist or hired staff or somebody that's on a consulting basis, there's probably somebody that's got a bad experience. Seems to me the bad experience would be you paid them and they gave you bad consultation or they didn't show up. That's probably the two gripes. Or the person that's unfairly says, I had a bad experience, but it really was, we know this happens. Remember, my sister-in-law owns a weight training and physical fitness facility. There's lots of people that say, I didn't get results. Well, it wasn't because the gym wasn't there, or it's because you didn't do the work and all that. I have a feeling there's probably farmers, Johnny, that would say, I didn't have a good experience. Well, maybe it wasn't the consultation, and maybe it wasn't the agronomics. Maybe it was you didn't do what you were supposed to do.
That's right. That's right. And it's always nobody's fault, right? Finger never points at themselves. I mean, everybody runs into that, and you brought up the small guy versus the large guys. I think it's a great opportunity for the small guys, probably better than the large guys, because if somebody farms 20,000 acres and the consultant, you call them and say, hey, can you start scouting for me? And they say, yeah, I'll be right there. How is that possible? How do they pick up that many? But a guy that farms 1,000 acres, you call a guy and he says, yeah, I'll be right there. I can pick you up, no problem. That's pretty believable.
Yeah,
So
right.
Kind of tying all that back in. It all goes both ways. And I think you just got to be careful who sometimes
what your point there was, the person that says I can pick up your 20,000 acre contract. Well, that's a lot to cover. That means that they must have lost a bunch of stuff. But yeah, the smaller operator that's listening to this, it's like, okay, that's a really good point. I've got mine might fit in with that consultant's other 20 clients that are within the 8-county area or something like that.
That's right.
Any bad experiences, Brian, besides sales agronomist term? Is there anything bad experience that you need to warn against?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, right, somebody didn't do the right thing, and Johnny and I talk about this all the time. We've seen it. We've been on both sides of it. As an agronomist, we make recommendations. Recommendations are generally pretty time sensitive, right? I mean, weather gets in the way. We don't forego an application or something of that nature at that point. For instance, we're late getting there. We do our best. But like I said, weather gets in the way. Life happens. Kids' ball games, PTO meetings, whatever it may be. Everything is time sensitive. There's probably guys that are, some of them better qualified than others on all sides of that. But I think in general, most of the guys that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I have customers that have their own independent consultants, good people, trying to do the right things. I often don't get in the way of undermining them. I generally think they're making solid, sound recommendations, and it's, at some point the onus is on the farmer, right, to get things done in a timely manner. Results could vary based on that. We're also dealing with a living, breathing crop, right, and a living, breathing soil and an uncontrollable environment, right? I mean, things happen. So I would just caution everybody that everything that happens is maybe not necessarily the consultant's fault. It's not necessarily the farmer's fault either, right? It's just life happens, timing, X, Y, Z, right? And I would say that, along those lines, I've had requests from a couple customers to do private consulting on their acres. Another reason why I won't do that is because I'm in the sales realm. I just think it's best if I keep both parts of that separate. That's why I generally make recommendations to some of these other guys I've got familiarity with. That I don't have the time. At the end of the day, I really don't have the time.
Johnny, do I need to know anything else about hiring an agronomist? The answer is yes, I need to do it. And you gave me a whole bunch of reasons and things to look for. Is there any last thought?
And I would call and get references and ask people how they're doing on their farm, if they're seeing them like they're supposed to be seeing them, because you don't want to start off on the wrong foot when you could prevent that with a couple of phone calls pretty quick.
Yep. I think we're going to leave it right there. If you want to see these guys and learn about agronomics, the XtremeAg Field Days begin in May 22nd at Chad Henderson's farm, June 12th at McGee, Arkansas with the Miles Farms, June 26th in Iowa for Kelly Garrett's. And then we're going to be August 5th. The first of our August is going to be at Verell Farms. I'm going to be there, and I want you to be there. Last year it was about 98 degrees and about 98% humidity. So aside from that, maybe bring a scuba tank so you can actually breathe, because it's almost like breathing underwater. Other than that, it's a great time, and you can go to the XtremeAg.farm website to register for that. While you're there, check out our new show, The Granary. Mr. Johnny was at The Granary. That's my on-farm hangout in Indiana where we're filming the show. It's real farmers with real talk from the personal to the professional. Go check it out. And also, if you've got a kid, niece, nephew, grandchild that is attending college or going to attend college pursuing an agricultural degree, 2 or 4 year degree at any accredited agricultural college, that means that kid's going to be eligible for the XtremeAg scholarship. We're doing it now again. 10 $3,000 scholarships. This is not petty change. This is important stuff. So you can do that also at the XtremeAg.farm website. Till next time, that's Johnny Verell and Brian Adams. I'm Damian Mason. Thanks for joining us here at Cutting the Curve.
That's a wrap for this episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast. Make sure to check out XtremeAg.com for more great content. Cutting the Curve is powered by Nachurs BioK. Check out Nachurs.com to learn more about how BioK can improve your farm's ROI.